Hello, everyone. Good morning and welcome to today's USD virtual session, How to Build a Competitive Resume. Today's session is co-hosted by the University of San Diego Alumni Association and Career Development Center. My name is Kara Marsh-Profit, and I am the Director of Alumni Operations and Engagement for USD's Office of Alumni Relations. A big shout out and welcome to all my fellow alumni on the call, and another welcome to all the USD students who have joined us today. The mission of the USD Alumni Association is to engage and enrich the Torero community for life. Today's program is rooted in the desire to offer meaningful ways for our community to stay in touch and learn from one another. We know how strong our USD network is, and hope these types of virtual opportunities will continue to strengthen the connection we have as Toreros. This session also falls in line with our annual Hire USD campaign. As a Torero, you are connected to an extraordinary resource, your fellow USD alumni and current USD students. You already know that Toreros are global citizens and ethical leaders who combine personal and professional achievement with a compassionate and community-oriented approach. We encourage you to think of your fellow alumni and current USD students for open positions at your company. For more on Hire USD, visit alumni.sandiego.edu and click on the Benefits tab. A few housekeeping items before I pass off the mic. We are using Zoom webinar today. The Q&A feature has been activated for you to post questions you may have of our presenters throughout the session. Today's session is being recorded and will be posted to the Alumni Association's YouTube channel next week. Without further ado, I would like to introduce today's facilitators, Dee Kayalar and Alex Lo, two of my most favorite colleagues. Dee is an ICF certified career coach and works within USD's Career Development Center, where she offers coaching to USD alumni, job seekers, and career planning and management, while helping them navigate their career challenges. She also oversees USD's campus-wide networking and mentorship platform team, which stands for Torero Employer and Alumni Mentors. Dee is a future USD alumna currently pursuing her graduate degree in SOLS. Alex Lo serves as USD's Assistant Director for Transfer, Graduate, and International Student Networks in the Career Development Center. In addition to his experience in higher education, he has industry experience in information technology, sales, customer service, and graphic design. His goal is to ensure that all students have the opportunity to access information, network, and mentors to make informed career decisions. Alex is a champion of adopting a positive, proactive, and can-do attitude during his clients' career pursuits. We are so fortunate to have Dee and Alex as part of our USD family. Take it away, you two.
Thank you so much, Kara. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. I'm Dee Kayalar, and as Kara mentioned, I manage USD's Alumni Career Services, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Alex Lo, who is responsible for graduate transfer and international student career services. So Alex, would you like to go ahead and share our presentation and the agenda for today?
So welcome, everyone. Let's see. So as Kara and Dee already mentioned, we're the co-host for this presentation today. And let me go over the learning outcomes designed for this workshop today. By the end of this presentation, we'll learn resume tips and trends, common resume mistakes, resume components, style, format, and the different resume types, and also STAR method.
All right, so I'll start us off with some quick facts. Now, nearly half of hiring managers, according to the Motley Fool, spend less than a minute to review resumes. So it becomes really important to highlight the most pertinent information on your resume. So if you think of your resume as sort of this prime real estate, you really want to be intentional with how you want to use that space. Now, nearly 20% of employers report that applicants lack appropriate tech skills and experiences. And so it's important to make sure that our resume clearly and accurately demonstrates our skills, our tech skills. And if we don't have the required top skills based on the positions that we're seeking, it's really important to consider upskilling or reskilling as necessary to meet the requirements of those positions. Now, over 90% of employers use social media to recruit new talent. Employers, as you know, are using LinkedIn to learn more about a candidate's professional experience. They're engaging candidates on Twitter to learn more about their interests and what they value. They monitor Facebook to get a glimpse of how candidates are presenting themselves to outside world. And you might notice that a lot of companies are promoting jobs with hashtags on TikTok or Instagram, and using these platforms to also show audiences what it's like to work for their companies. So it really makes it important to also pay attention on how we're branding ourselves online. Now, 77% of employers believe that soft skills are important. So including things like communication, public speaking, critical thinking, problem solving, leadership, conflict management, change management, teamwork, collaboration, interpersonal skills, intercultural competence, and work ethic gets to be important as well. Now, Alex is going to go ahead and share some common resume mistakes.
Okay, so most common resume mistakes. First, typos, grammatical errors. Oftentimes, when you apply to a job, the recruiters, the hiring managers may not know who you are, and your resume acting as a document used as an application material will make the first impression. And because they don't know you, they may very quickly jump to a conclusion about who this candidate may be, and based on, oh, typo, this person is sloppy. Grammatic error, this person does not proofread, and so that means this person is not a serious candidate. And as much as they may not really know what's happening behind those errors, and let me quote one of my friend who used to work in human resources for very large public universities, and for any job open, they get several hundreds of applications. And she said that when she reviewed resume, one of the first things she did was to find the slightest excuse to disqualify any candidate. So if you have typo, grammatic error, that give you red flags for the reviewers. Lies on the resume, and of course, we don't want to inflate our experience or show the employers that cite the skills that you do not have or the experience you never had, and eventually that will definitely come up. Unprofessional emails. I still remember almost 20 years ago, I was a hiring manager for a retail setting, and there was this candidate who used an email address. I cannot tell you what that email address is here in this presentation, but I remember that. It's so inappropriate, full of profanity, and maybe he thought it was funny among friends, but in a hiring manager's eyes, that's just not professional. And no quantifiable results. And whenever possible, you may want to cite the measurable result on your resume. So for example, instead of just planned social events for the office, then there's really no telling how big those events are, how much responsibility. It could be a birthday party, 10 people attended. And however, if you write planned office event attended by more than 50 people and about $2,000 budget, and received 4.8 out of 5 rating. So that shows a little bit different level of responsibilities. Text heavy, writing full paragraphs. Just remember that employers have a lot of resume to read for each application. So if you write in full paragraphs, and it will be very hard for employers to read. So Dee will talk a little bit more about breaking down the description to bullet points, exceeding 2 pages. And again, because employers have so many resumes they need to process, and if you have a 5-page long resume, and they probably won't pay a whole lot of attention after the first page or 2. Okay, so and also being able to fit a long work history into 2 pages shows your ability to prioritize information, what's most relevant for your readers to read.
Thank you, Alex. So on average, anywhere between 250 to 400 resumes are submitted for any given corporate job. And you can assume that only 5 to 10 candidates will be called for interviews, and only 1 will get an offer. So it really attests the importance of having a solid resume. It's important to start our bullet points with very strong action verbs, and think of creative ways of articulating our accomplishments. So many times applicants will use verbs like responsible for, led, or handled. But if you've led a project, then you may want to consider words like orchestrated or operated. Or if you've brought a new project to life, then maybe devised or engineered. If you've changed or improved something, then perhaps redesigned or restructured, amongst others. Or if you've achieved something extraordinary, then maybe exceeded or outperformed. We also want to make sure that we send our resumes within a few days of the job posting if possible, because a lot of the positions will start interviewing on a rolling basis. Of course, exception may be those vacancies that have a closing date listed on the job description, but otherwise trying to get those resumes out as early as possible. We want to include a key skills section that is customized to the needs of the positions that we're applying for. And if this is an area that you want to specifically highlight, then it's important to consider including it at the top of your resume, because recruiters, hiring managers do pay attention to the first half of your resume the most. A very common mistake is using first pronouns. So I's, my's, we want to make sure that we take those out. While talking about that, another maybe mistake is also not using the right tense, right? We want to make sure we're using the present tense for our current positions and the past tense for all the ones that are previous. It's important to include metrics and quantify our bullet points and bold them if possible, or find a way to accentuate them. We want to make sure that our statements are results driven, that they're outcome focused, and that we are stating the importance of the actions or the tasks that we performed to the overall mission and strategic goals of the companies that we're applying for. And we'll provide examples of how to do that shortly. Another key element is to make sure that our resumes are ATS friendly. So optimizing the bullet points to the needs of the positions, making sure that we're really customizing them. And there is a tool, I know this was one of the audience questions that we received. There is a software called jobscan.co that helps to keyword optimize your resumes. It's a very intuitive, easy to use software. You essentially upload your resume and the job descriptions that you're interested in, and it tells you what keywords and criterion words are missing from your resume. And then another important point is to keep your designs as simple as possible. Before your resume, is reviewed by a human, it's going to go through, if it's submitted online, most likely it's going to go through what we call automated tracking systems. And those ATS systems, they do not recognize Canva resumes. They do not recognize those really highly graphicized, formatted resumes. So we want to make sure that we're keeping the design as simple as possible. And if you want to create that really attractive version, that's wonderful to have if you're going to an in-person career expo or fair or going to an interview. But when you're submitting online, just keep the design as simple as possible.
Okay, so now let's go over some of the most common resume components and the basic format layout. So header, your name, email, phone number, LinkedIn. And if you want to put LinkedIn address on URL on your resume, please customize that. By default, when you create a LinkedIn account, you will receive you'll be assigned a URL that have a lot of random characters and numbers in there, and you can easily customize that when you go to your LinkedIn profile, upper right-hand side, customize my URL. And not only is neat visually, but also when employers print out hard copies and they cannot just click to follow your LinkedIn URL, they can easily type to find your LinkedIn account. Street address is optional, and typically employers just want to know if you're local. So city, state, zip code should be sufficient. And use the same header across documents. Resume, cover letter, they're usually used together, so make them visually consistent. Okay, so different headers, emphasize section headers, for example, education, professional experience, skills. You can use all cap, bold, or underline. And for recent graduate, typically the degree you just received are likely to be very relevant information for the reader. So list education first. And for more experienced professionals, you can list your experience first. And when you list your education, list a university name, full degree title, for example, Bachelor of Arts in Economics, and other sections that may be applicable, professional experience, skills, project, leadership, research, community. And for experienced alumni, and you can probably have started resume with a summary of skill, summary of qualification, or objective. Okay, list the experience in reverse chronological order. That means the most recent comes first, and include the months and years. And employers typically like to see months, not just years. And if you list 2021 to 2022, that could be 2 weeks long, or could be almost 2 years long. So if you can remember the months, make sure you include the months. Experience should be bullet pointed, and should be no more than 2 rows, and the line end as close to the right margin as possible. So if you have a bullet point that lasts 3-4 lines, you can probably break it down, make it a little bit easier to read. And also, if you find yourself having a line, just go over a little bit and just have 1 word or 2 words going to the next line. And maybe you can rephrase it a little bit. And so it does not create this very awkward line that only have 2 words in there. 1 full page, and if you have a 1-page resume, just make sure that a balanced white space, and if you have a little extra white space on the bottom, and maybe you can loosen up the format a little bit, create a little spacing between lines, or maybe make the top margin a little bit larger to balance out the overall text and the space. Consistency is a key. And so if you use one type of bullet point for experience and another type of bullet point for activity and leadership, and for recruiters who read hundreds of resumes for each job, when they read people's resume, they tend to pick up those little details right away. So if you have bullet points that's different style, different indentation, or on another very common inconsistency I've seen is the dates on the right hand side. And if you use Microsoft Word, you keep typing, then you type hyphen, which is a short bar, and you continue typing, and Microsoft Word will automatically convert that to a dash. But if you copy and paste a set of dates from a different document, and it's not dash, it's hyphen. And again, for people who read a lot of resume, they pick that up right away. So those are just a couple of really consistent issues that's really easy for readers to spot. Other things like maybe you capitalize every word for a certain section and do not do the same for the next section, or use period sparsely, and some bullet points end up with period, some don't. And so again, for recruiters, that's very easy for them to spot. And tailor to the job description, like Dee mentioned earlier. Your resume may want to have the keywords that employers are looking for. A resume is not meant to be read through very carefully like autobiography, and it's more like business card than autobiography. And the employers typically scan through your resume very quickly, and especially during the earlier stage of the screening, those human resources assistant, the recruiters, they're scanning for keywords, and ATS, they're scanning for keywords. So make sure your resume, if you have the right experience and skill, make sure you describe them just like how they appear on the job description.
Thank you, Alex. And just as Alex mentioned, during the initial first phone screening, before that, they will only scan it for about 4 to 6 seconds. So that's why it's so key to include the most relevant and important information. And we had an audience question about the appropriate length and how many years of experience to include on the resume. And typically that's about your last decades of experience, so focusing on the last 5 to 10 years. And if you're sort of like low experience, then 1 page. If you're mid to senior executive and with high experience, then 2 pages, but making sure, to Alex's point, to keep it to 2 at most. So I just want to go over the main types of resumes. There are 3 main types: the reverse chronological, which is the most common, the functional, and the combined hybrid format. Now, the chronological resume, that's the one that we recommend using when your work and employment history is directly relevant to the jobs that you're seeking. Again, as the name suggests, you list your work history in chrono order from the most recent to the least recent. And it's ideal if you have a gap-free work history and you're seeking those jobs that are directly relevant. Now, the functional resume, which has become quite popular actually in the aftermath of COVID, with a lot of people shifting to different industries, is one where you highlight your core competencies or your core skills. It's ideal if you're transitioning industries, like I mentioned, or you lack work history that is directly relevant to the positions that you're seeking. So essentially, diverse the attention from where and when you were previously employed to the transferable skills that you can bring into that position. And sometimes, candidates will include a executive summary or a headline at the top. Then we have the hybrid format, the combined format, and this essentially includes the work history and the skills section. It highlights your relevant skills while including that chronological work history. And it's ideal if you have a mix of skills and work experiences that are relevant to your desired jobs. Now, in the following slides, I'm actually going to go over some of the resumes I have helped my clients build. So I've just removed the personal identifiers, and these are actual client resumes that I've worked on with my clients. So here, the first is an example of a reverse chronological resume. You'll notice here that the client is a finance executive. They're mid-level in their career, given the breadth of experience. You'll notice that they've made, correct use of tenses. They've listed their skills on top to highlight their technical skills as well as their soft skills. And the bullet points are sufficiently outcome driven, and they've been quantified, and they've bolded the metrics, and each of the achievement statements starts with very strong action verbs, like things like monitored, partnered, reconstructed. And it has been optimized for keywords, like use of phrases like expert level analytical and financial skills or strategic thinking. You'll see weaved throughout like industry jargon, like, OPEX for operating expense or AOB for annual operating budget. It's been optimized for technical skills like SAP or Tableau. And education is listed at the bottom. And this is something customary, especially if you've had extensive employment history. So you want to, like I said, the first half is the prime real estate. You want to make sure that most important, most pertinent information that you'd like to highlight is included in the first half of the resume. And so we see, given the client's extensive experience, we have the education listed towards the end. Now, in the second example, okay, perfect. So here, this is a functional format, again, an actual client resume. The experience here was that the client had their full career experience was within real estate, and they were interested in switching to development and advancement positions within foundations, within the nonprofit sector. So we had to create a brand new resume. So did away with the chrono traditional resume, because a real estate resume will not necessarily open the door for the types of positions the client was seeking if we can't really focus on the relevance, right, to the client's new career field of interest. So the aim here was to focus on the transferable skills. So what we essentially did was we identified job postings in the client's desired fields and looked through the keywords, the key qualifications that were desired, that were required, and identified ones that were really relevant to the client's background. And so we decided to highlight research, analysis, and problem solving, attention to detail. And then we clustered the relevant experience based on those core functional areas. You'll notice that we place the dates, that we put the places and dates of employment under a section called employment history. And again, the aim here was to really shift attention to skills that could be transferred over to the client's new career field of interest. And then in the third example, this is a hybrid format. And this was a client who was within the banking sector, a majority of experience. They were mid-level. Majority of the experience was in one company, and they were looking to move to a different corporate career. And so we still listed the employment in reverse chronological order, but because they wanted to transition out of banking, we created new functional areas and really focused on things like marketing, new business development, staff training and development. And so, and then broke down the achievement statements based on those core competencies for the most recent position. This particular client had actually spent about 10 years in their most current position. And so, which is the reason we use the skill-based clustering for that most recent position. Again, education listed at the bottom, given the extensive employment experience. All right, next, Alex will go over the STAR method for creating our achievement statements.
Okay, so talking about achievement, and STAR method is not only good for resume writing, but also in the interview, if you want to showcase, tell the employers an example of how you accomplish certain tasks using certain skills, and this is a really ideal format to use. So STAR stands for situation. What was the situation, the context, and the task, what you were tasked with, what you were supposed to do. And also, oftentimes, they may include a challenge, obstacles you have to overcome. And action, and explain the action you took, and not just what you did, but maybe a little bit more in depth. What kind of skills involved, and how did you deliver your action, and why did you choose one course of action over another? And the result, what kind of impact did you create, and describe the outcome of impact of your action, and how does that benefit your employer? Okay, so here's an example. So if I just write on my resume, my responsibility include handling digital marketing and social media. That's pretty flat. It doesn't include a whole lot of detail about the skills that I use. So if we use a STAR method, so task is I'm supposed to do responsible for digital marketing, activity in social media. And what I did was I create engaging content for websites, social media, and email. And how did I do that? What kind of skill did I use? Use videos, custom graphics, and other forms of multimedia. And why does that matter? And because as a result of my work, I increased so and so percent in total viewership across social media sites. So now this bullet point, instead of responsible for company social media, I can write, manages company social media by creating engaging content of websites, social media platform, using video, custom graphics, and resulting in a so and so percentage increase in viewership.
Okay, so we alluded to this a number of times already, but given its importance, want to emphasize it again. And I know there was an audience question about this too. So jobscan.co, as mentioned, is a really, really great tool that helps you to render your resume ATS friendly. And it's very intuitive and easy to use. As I mentioned previously, you upload your resume and then you copy paste the job descriptions that you're interested in, and it lets you know what keywords are missing from your resume. And then based on the job description that you've shared there, it will also give you some curated job postings, so some recommended vacancies based on the information you have posted. And so definitely take advantage of that. Now, in the absence of this tool, and what we career counselors used to do in the absence of that was really look at, essentially when I'm in a client appointment, one of the things that I'll do is we'll use portals like CareerShift, Indeed, LinkedIn, and we'll identify a few jobs, right? 5 to 10 jobs that is aligned with the client's interests, their strengths, and their skills. And we'll look through the list of qualifications and, the job requirements to highlight the core functions, core skills that are required. And then we'll look again, we'll kind of, look through all of the jobs that we've identified and go through them and see if there's a theme. What are the kinds of skills that keep popping up, and which of the ones are relevant to the client's background, and make sure that we're weaving them strategically and intentionally into the resume. So the absence of that, that's a great way to go about optimizing the resume for keywords. So in summary, it is really important to develop a master resume that includes all of your experiences to date, right? And then you want to use that master resume to create targeted versions of your resume that are customized for specific roles. Now, one of the top reasons why candidates do not get interviews is because they may be sending the same resume for every single position. And that's not going to get the interview because of the automated tracking systems and the new AI and automation that's being used in recruitment. So making sure that we're customizing. Also, ATS friendly, we don't want to use tables or columns. ATS softwares, they do not pick that up. We want to use screen friendly traditional fonts like, Cambria, Calibri, Century Gothic, Arial. Fonts like, usually 11 or 12 are preferred fonts. It's important to save the file as a Word file or a PDF if possible. And as much as I'm a huge Canva user and love it, Canva resumes also don't pass through applicant tracking systems. Again, you're more than welcome to use a more designed version once you've landed the job interview. We want to start the bullet points with really strong action verbs. As Alex explained, we want to make sure that we're following the STAR method and showing the context and showing the context as to why, what we did and its overall significance for the company, and how we're contributing to the company's strategic vision and goals. I know a number of the audience questions was about, how do we set ourselves apart, right? How do we set our resume apart from others? And one way to do that is to really focus on your unique qualities that probably differentiate you from others who are applying for those same positions. So it may be, if you have linguistic skills, if you've done, if you've served as a Peace Corps member, or if you've had, study abroad, or if you have certifications that are relevant to your career field, you definitely want to make sure that you are highlighting them a number of times in the resume, so that any type of specialized skills, so that so that you can stand out from the crowd. It's really important to connect your skills with the needs of the company. Every position, and that's why we want to create those targeted versions of our resume, because each position will require different kinds of skills and experiences. And the job description is sort of the answer sheet for that, because every company has their own lingo, their own individual jargon, and we want to make sure that we're mimicking their language in the way that we brand our resumes. And then making sure that the achievement statements are outcome focused, that they really communicate our value and our impact. Always thinking, why was it important? How have I expanded my role? How can I creatively articulate this to take home the point that I have made a significant impact for this company? So, using things like, I have done this resulting in, I have done such and so leading to, so that we can demonstrate that value. All right.
Okay, so now this slide, let me introduce a little bit of the Career Center resources. You can make an appointment with Steve directly through the link here. Also, you can use Handshake to book an appointment. Students, alumni, there are multiple career counselors here you can choose from. And check out the editable resume sample on our website. So this is not just a resume guide, but also it comes with Google Docs. You can edit, you can save it, you can. Those are very simple ATS friendly documents, and you can customize however you like and change the font to your favorite font and change the spacing. So I really recommend using this template if you need one, instead of using the template maybe somewhere you find online. And also, Ting, as Dee mentioned earlier, we have this Toro Employer Alumni Mentoring Portal, and has job posting, and probably even the most valuable feature of this platform is a mentoring program. 2,500 alumni sign up to be mentors, and those can be valuable networking contact. And because they volunteer to be part of this program, they're not going to be wondering, hey, why are you writing me? I don't know you. I don't want to talk to you. And because they volunteer to be part of this program, they're more likely to respond to your request to meet or to exchange information. And upcoming events, we have Impact Career Fair, March 22nd. And typically this fair draws more than 50, usually more than 50 employers. And this fair focuses a little bit more on nonprofit, government, and education related organizations. And we also have an upcoming How to Stand Out in a Job Interview workshop. My colleagues Sue Kelly and Dee will be presenting, and that's March 24th. And we also have industry networking night and media, social impact, and sports. So,
Okay. All right, and Alex has shared some ways that you can stay connected with us, and we'll make sure that when we follow up with you post-event, in the email that we share the recording, we'll make sure that we share the links to how to make an appointment with us. All of our alumni are eligible for lifetime career counseling services from our center. They're capped to 3 per year currently. Yes, and I would love to partner with you and work with you to answer any of your career-related questions. Now, I see that we have a number of questions in the chat box. So we'll go through them individually, and then we'll go through some of the audience questions we've received. And please feel free to type in your questions. All right. Okay, so we have a question regarding any tips for cover letters, what should be included or repeated that is or isn't on the resume. And I'll take a stab at this and then pass it over to Alex if he has any comments. So with respect to the cover letters, we want the cover letters to not really reiterate the things that are listed on our resume. The cover letter is something where you want to create that wow effect because they already have access to your resume. And so one of the things that we want to highlight is, why show our passion for the position. Why are we interested in that position? And what are the unique ways that we can contribute to that company's mission, to their vision? Before writing any cover letter, it really is important to read, to look at the company's websites, their Twitter pages, their LinkedIn, just to have a sense of, what are the services that the company is providing? What are some of the projects, programs that they're currently involved in, so that you can identify a link between what you can offer them and their needs. And usually the first paragraph in a cover letter is focused on, your needs as it relates, your qualifications as it relates to the needs of that particular company. Then I usually suggest my clients to provide 1 to 2 very specific examples of how they've utilized how they've used their qualifications to make an impact, a difference in the previous places that they've worked in. Because usually examples stick with employers, with hiring managers, and it's a great way to kind of stand out from the crowd. And then to end with a call to action, right? You want them to act upon your cover letter and call you up for an interview. So even going as far as to say, I'm available for an interview opportunity to discuss, my qualifications for this position in detail during weekdays between so and so hours, and can be reached at this email or via this phone number, just so that you're really calling that, calling them to call you and make that appointment with you. Anything you'd like to add to that, Alex?
Yes, thank you, Dee. I agree with Dee that you do not want to repeat exactly what's already on your resume, but don't be afraid of cite something that's already on your resume if you find that relevant. Resume is more like a list of facts of what you have done, your education, your skill. Cover letter give you an opportunity to more actively connect what you have to bring to what employers are looking for. And so cover letter, the purpose of cover letter is to explain to the employer that how you qualify for this job and why you're going to be a good fit, why you're interested in this position. So in the cover letter, of course, it's very important to specifically tailor your letter to highlight the most relevant skills that the employers are looking for. So instead of the employer just look through your resume to find the skill they're looking for, you can actively point out, look, you're looking for somebody who can do data analysis. And when I was working in so and so role, and I perform data analysis for so and so reason, generate so and so impact. And so cover letter give you an opportunity to more actively connect your skill to employers' needs. And also talking about your interest and your passion for the company. What do you know about this organization? And that's probably not the information, probably not the kind of information that you can include in your resume. And however, cover letter will be a perfect space to talk about what you're passionate about and what kind of impact you would like to create for them.
That's great. And also on the cover letters, I've seen clients, for example, just recently I had a client who was in graphic design, and they've had this wonderful portfolio. So, if there are links that you can include or hyperlink to, it could be a personal website, your blog or your e-portfolio. You can also use your cover letter to include that type of additional information, and make sure that the cover letters are also ATS optimized. So we want to keyword optimize the cover letters just in the same way that we do with the resumes. What were the fonts suggested for resumes? Usually fonts like Arial, Calibri, Century Gothic, there is a Palatino type, like those are the ones that are very clear cut, like very sleek looking. And usually you want it to be, you don't want the font size to be too little. You want to make it as easily digestible and easy to read for the employer as possible. Anything you want to add to that, Alex?
Yeah, if you feel that the basic font like Times New Roman or Calibri, those are too ordinary, too boring, maybe you can try Garamond or Cambria. Those are
Garamond
still,
is another good one. Yep.
Yeah, those are very classy looking fonts, but also very formal. Garamond is a little bit more fine-boned font. So if you italicize the text, it can be a little hard to read. My personal favorite is Cambria, but really that's really up to you.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see. Would you recommend a specific number of topics or bullet points in the experience and skills section, a hybrid or functional resume? Now, that is going to depend on the job that you are applying for. So again, I would, my answer key is always the job description. If I'm reading the job description and I see, for example, public speaking and communication, its importance is highlighted a number of times, then I want to, absolutely, just let the job description guide you in the number of competencies or core functional areas you want to include. Usually I tend to go with 3 to 5 at most. With that being said, or it might make sense to combine the ones that are very relevant to each other. But I would go with the job description and just make sure that you're including the ones that have been extensively highlighted in the job description.
Yeah, I agree. 3 to 5 seem pretty common and appropriate. And although it's not set in stone, but I think that's a good that's a good number of bullet points to aim for. I've seen an alumni who, for each job she had, she lists 12 to 15 bullet points. That was just so overwhelming, and I doubt any employer should actually read through all 15 bullet points.
Correct. And you want to include, so going to back to the traditional formats as well, you want to include the most number of bullet points for the most recent position. So making sure that if you've included, say, 5 to 6 for your most recent position, the next one down should maybe be 3 or 4, and next one down. Because again, the employers want to pay attention to the first half of your resume, to your more recent experiences, and avoid redundancies as well. So if you've been involved in staff training for all of your different positions, try to include, maybe a little bit of unique specialization or something different that you've contributed, so that it doesn't really sound or read very, very redundant. Okay, so we responded to that. Perfect. Please keep your questions coming via the chat. These are very helpful. Are personal professional websites the norm now? What do you think, Alex?
Personal professional website. So
I think it depends on the industry, right? Or the job that they're applying for. But
yeah, I'm thinking about for anybody who may want to have a online portfolio to show the future audience, and that's actually pretty common. People working design industry and marketing, and or in some cases, showcase their writing, and I think that's very common. I think the key is that what do you want to show your readers, and
and what is the company looking for?
Yeah.
So I'll provide a quick example from my own personal background. I was in the nonprofit management sector for about 6-7 years, and was going into program development, events management. So I did create that personal website, and I had it was a portfolio of all the events that I'd created, and I included flyers for each of the events, the marketing assets that I had worked on, and I still have it, and sometimes I'll share with clients just for example. So it really depends on what you want to showcase, but also what the organization is looking for. Again, writers, graphic art, designers, architects, I mean, all of the, we always suggest, creating an e-portfolio if they don't have one, just so that they can convey their unique value in more ways than one. Okay, I hope I'm not missing any questions. I think we just responded to all the ones that were submitted through the online chat Q&A function. We received a few audience questions, and I think we responded to most of them, but there are a couple here that we can address. And one is a question about what is one of the most unnecessary things included in most resumes? You want to take a stab at that one, Alex?
I would say generic summary. Things like self-motivated, energetic, professional, seeking exciting opportunities. Of course, who is not? And especially in the prime real estate of your resume, writing a very generic summary like that, it's just not a very efficient way to use the space on your resume. So that's the first thing came to my mind.
One of the first ones that came to my mind was interests, like the interest section, and people will put like, oh, I like photography, or I like rowing, or I like this. And like, for me, if it's relevant to the position that you're applying for, yes, definitely have it there. But it's like, if it's really not relevant, I don't think it really, it matters. And also, don't put references upon request, or any of your references. Again, that's a big no-no. Don't include any photos of yourself. No headshots. That's kind of a big no-no too. Unless you're submitting for a job in Europe, in which case that's like another conversation. After working a first job for 2 years, this is a question from Jacob. Should I include internships I held while in school, especially ones that were many years ago? What do you think, Alex?
I think that depends on relevancy. If you have been working for 10 years and you still list your college internship, that may be a little bit old. And like in the past 10 years in your professional life, you haven't had anything that's more significant than your internship in college, then I think that's a little bit off. But if you're just graduated a couple of years ago, you feel that the internship is still very relevant, it's still very significant, you can definitely include them. And usually when I answer the question, now, should I include this on my resume? Should I include that or delete that? I usually recommend my client that just imagine that you're sitting in a job interview for your dream job and the employer asks you to go over your resume. What do you have to say about each experience? And if you find you don't have much to say about this internship anymore because you have something more significant to talk about, then you don't have to include that. And on the other hand, if you still find that, oh, I've been working in the past 2 years, getting so and so experience, but still during junior year, I did this very unique internship that has a really, really interesting experience. And let me tell you about that. And so if that's the case, you probably want to keep that on your resume.
Mm-hmm. Great point. Another question we have is, what should we include on a resume when we have no prior experience in the field? How do we stand out? And here, one thing that, and this was a question, and one thing that we can do, Malia, is include, if you have any projects, any research projects, any projects that you've worked in school that you think would be relevant to the kinds of positions you're applying, that could really make for great content, really relevant content. If you've, maybe sometimes we'll include relevant coursework, right? You're fresh out of college and you don't have much of an experience. So things that you have done in school, be it the classes you've taken, the projects that you've completed, or the extracurriculars and community service and other leadership activities that you were involved in, will be really, really helpful and useful. So definitely include those and come make an appointment with us so we together can work with you and partner with you to creatively articulate that content in a way that will make it really relevant and attractive to the hiring manager. Yeah, and this is also a valid point for all of my clients, mothers who've been away from the workforce for a long time. I'll get clients that will say, well, I have not been working. What do I put on there? But, you have not been sitting idly for the last 5-10 years. Let's talk about everything else that you were involved in for which you were not paid. And let's try and get creative about ways to incorporate that. So keeping that in mind is important. Okay, I think we have covered everything that that were sent to us prior to this event, as well as the ones that are in the Q&A. But I'm just going to invite all of you to ask away if you have any additional questions. We have just a few more minutes left before we close. Any other questions? Well, with that, we would like to thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you so much, Kara. And please make an appointment with us so we can support you further.
That was amazing. Thanks, you guys. I knew that this would be an amazing presentation. I didn't have the chance to see it beforehand, and my gut instinct was right. You guys nailed it again. What amazing information for all of our participants. As Dee mentioned, thank you guys for joining us. I do have a quick thank you slide to share with you. The Alumni Association has been really active on offering both virtual and now in-person events. As you can see, there are quite a few things in the pipeline just for the next couple of weeks even. Obviously, the connection on the 24th with Dee and Sue Kelly will round out our higher USD programming for the year. But there are a lot of other opportunities, including some of our regionally based events in Vegas, virtual connections in Philadelphia and Atlanta coming up, and Austin, some alumni spotlights, even a San Diego Gulls game. So for those of you who are alumni, these events are all open to you. Those of you who are students, we don't necessarily promote these events to students, but should you want to be proactive and join us at any of these programs, it is a really great way for you to take the bull by the horn and start to build that connection with USD alumni, without a doubt. So thank you guys again for your time. Again, Dee and Alex, love it. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise, and we wish you all well and hope to see you again very soon. Take good care, you guys.